We have been trained to worship the uniform. When you see a man with silver hair, 4 gold stripes on his shoulder, and the wings of a major airline pinned to his chest, you feel an instinctual sense of safety. You look at him and think, this man is a master. He has flown Boeing 777 seconds across the Pacific. He has battled typhoons in Hong Kong. He has landed 300-ton machines in blinding snowstorms. He is a god of the sky. And if you are a wealthy individual, perhaps a NASCAR legend, or a business tycoon looking to hire a pilot for your private jet, this is exactly the resume you want on your desk. 20,000 flight hours. It looks like the ultimate insurance policy. It looks like you are buying experience, wisdom, and safety. But aviation expert Glen, a man who has spent 40 years in the trenches of general aviation, has a terrifying warning for you. That god of the sky might be the most dangerous person you can put in the left seat of your private jet. In the wake of the Biffle crash investigation, we are peeling back the layers of a systemic failure. We aren't talking about a broken engine today. We are talking about a broken system. We are talking about the retired captain trap. Why does a pilot with 20,000 hours of experience crash a simple business jet in good weather? Because, as Glen reveals in his most explosive update yet, for the last 20 years, that man hasn't really been flying. He has been managing. And now, alone in the cockpit, the silence is deafening. Welcome to the Air Debrief. Today, we expose the industry's dirty secret. To understand the trap, we must first understand the life of a senior airline captain. For the last 2 or 3 decades of his career, this pilot has lived in what we call the cocoon of support. Imagine his typical day. He arrives at the airport. He doesn't check the weather. A professional dispatch team has already printed it out for him. He doesn't calculate the fuel load. A computer has done it, and a fuel truck is already filling the wings. He doesn't load the bags. He doesn't worry about the weight and balance. He doesn't even talk to the passengers until he makes his PA announcement. He sits in the left seat, the command seat. But look closely at what he actually does. He is an administrator. He is a manager. He commands gear up. The co-pilot pulls the lever. He commands flaps 20. The co-pilot moves the flaps. He asks, what is our gate number? The co-pilot checks the iPad. If he spills his coffee, the co-pilot hands him a napkin. His hands-on flying skills, the raw, stick and rudder connection to the machine, are reserved for perhaps 3 minutes of takeoff and 3 minutes of landing. For the other 10 hours of the flight, he is monitoring systems that fly themselves. He is safe because he is supported. He is safe because he has a redundant brain sitting next to him. But then, he turns 65. The FAA says, time to retire. But he's not ready to stop. He still wants to fly, and he needs the money. So, he enters the world of private aviation. And this is where the nightmare begins. He steps into a 40-year-old Citation jet. Suddenly, the cocoon is ripped away. There is no dispatch department, there is no gate agent, there is no baggage handler, and most critically, there is no co-pilot. Glen calls the Citation a double-fisted slobber knocker. It is a physical airplane. It requires constant trimming. It requires constant attention. Now, this 65-year-old manager has to be the pilot, the navigator, the weatherman, and the baggage loader. He has to program a GPS he has never seen before. He has to talk to air traffic control while hand-flying an unstable approach in turbulence. The muscle memory of turning to his right and asking for help, he turns right and sees an empty seat. The cognitive load spikes. The brain, unused to this multitasking for 20 years, begins to short-circuit. 20,000 hours of managing does not translate to 1 hour of surviving alone. But surely, you ask, the FAA tests these pilots? Surely they have to prove they can fly the jet alone before they are allowed to carry passengers? Yes, and no. Glen exposes a scarlet letter in the aviation world, a secret marking on a pilot's license that most owners never bother to look for. It is the phrase, "sick required, second in command required." What does this mean? It means that when this 20,000-hour captain went for his single pilot exemption check ride the test to prove he could fly the jet alone, he failed. The examiner saw him get behind the airplane. The examiner saw him miss a radio call. The examiner saw him struggle with the avionics. The examiner said, "Captain, you are a great pilot. When you have help, but alone, you are dangerous. I cannot sign you off to fly single pilot." so they issue a restricted type rating, SIC required. It means you can fly this jet, but you must bring a babysitter. You cannot be alone. Now, here's the trap. Does the billionaire owner know the difference between a single pilot rating and an SIC required rating? Usually, no. The pilot shows his license. The owner sees citation jet and airline transport pilot. He assumes it's good. And sometimes, tragically, these pilots, either out of ego or pressure from the owner to save money, will ignore that limitation. They will fly alone anyway. Or they will put a non-pilot in the right seat, a friend, a wife, a mechanic, and claim they have a crew. But when the engine explodes at V1, a passenger in the right seat cannot help you run the emergency checklist. That SIC required stamp is a warning label written in blood. Ignoring it is not just illegal, it is suicidal. But how do they even get rated on these jets in the first place? If they have been flying Boeings for 30 years, how do they legally jump into a citation? They need training. But not all training is created equal. Glen draws a sharp line in the sand between professional training and the diploma mills. On one side, you have the Ivy League of Aviation, Flight Safety International, CAE, SimCom. These places cost $30,000 for a type rating. You spend 2 weeks in a full-motion simulator that replicates death scenarios, so realistically, you come out sweating and shaking. If you fail, you fail. They don't care who you are. On the other side, you have what Glen calls the mom-and-pop schools. These are the bargain basements of aviation training. Cost? Maybe $10,000. Time? 5 days. Instead of a grueling simulator, you fly the actual airplane. But you don't practice engine fires at V1 because that's too dangerous to do in a real plane. You don't practice catastrophic electrical failure in a storm. You fly around the patch. You do a few landings, you eat lunch, you talk about the good old days with the instructor, and at the end of the week, you get the same piece of paper. Owners love these pilots because they are cheap. They didn't cost $30,000 to train, but when the real emergency happens, that pilot falls back on his training. And his training was a gentleman's course. He has a PhD in flying nice days and a kindergarten education in flying dying jets. We have discussed the training. Now we must discuss the biology. This is the most uncomfortable part of the conversation. It is the part that gets people angry, but it is the truth. Aging affects performance. Glen shares terrifying anecdotes from his 40 years of flying alongside these old guys. Story number 1, The Drive. Glen recalls riding to the airport with a retired captain. As they approached the highway, the captain drove straight past a giant reflective red sign that said, "Wrong way." He drove down a one-way street against traffic. Glen had to yell to stop him. The captain's response? "I didn't see it." Pause and think about that. If a man cannot see a giant red sign at 30 miles per hour in a car, how is he supposed to see a runway hold short line at 140 miles per hour in the rain? Story number 2, the radio silence. Glen flew with another veteran captain across Canada. For 45 minutes, the cockpit was silent. Glen finally checked the radio. The captain had dialed in the wrong frequency. He had been talking to no one for nearly an hour. He didn't notice the silence. He didn't check. Hearing loss, vision degradation, slowed cognitive reaction times. These are not moral failings, they are biological facts. In a multi-crew airliner, the young co-pilot compensates for this. He hears the radio call the captain missed. He spots the traffic the captain didn't see. But in a single pilot jet, there is no backup. The captain's biological blind spots become the airplane's blind spots. And the medical certificate? Glen points out that in the private world, you can often find a pilot-friendly doctor who will sign a Class 2 medical for $200 in 15 minutes. It's a pay-to-pass system, just like the flight schools. So why are these pilots flying? Who puts them in the cockpit? The blame does not rest solely on the pilots. It rests on the enablers, the cheap owners. Glen describes a specific demographic in private aviation, the bargain hunter. These are wealthy individuals who buy a jet not for $20 million, but for $500,000. They buy an old Citation II or V. It costs the same as a Lamborghini. But they forget one thing. It may cost the same to buy, but it costs a fortune to maintain. Real jets require engine programs, insurance policies that cost $700 per flight hour to cover overhauls. Cheap owners don't pay for this. They run the engines naked. And because they are cheap with the machine, they are cheap with the crew. A sharp, young, flight safety trained pilot knows his worth. He demands a $120,000 salary. He demands safety protocols. He demands a co-pilot. The cheap owner doesn't want to hear that. So he hires the retired captain. This pilot is already collecting a pension. He just wants some extra cash to pay for his boat. He will fly for $500 a day. He won't ask for a co-pilot. He won't complain about the broken radar. It is a toxic marriage. A cheap owner, a rusty pilot, an old jet. It is the perfect recipe for a smoking hole in the ground. The Greg Biffle crash is a tragedy, but it is also a wake-up call. We must stop being dazzled by the gold stripes of the past. Whether you are a prospective owner, a passenger, or a young pilot, building hours. You need to vet the person in the left seat. Do not assume. Interview. Glen gives us the 3 questions you must ask. 1. Show me your license. Look for the words "sick required." If you see it and you are the only passenger, run. 2. Where do you train? If they say flight safety or SimCom, good. If they name a local school you've never heard of, be wary. 3. When was your last simulator check? If it wasn't in the last 12 months, do not board that plane. There is a place for retired airline captains. They are legends. They have earned their rest. But the cockpit of a high-performance single-pilot jet is not a retirement home. It is a gladiator arena. It requires reflexes, recent training, and humility. Safety is not about what you did 20 years ago. It is about what you can do today. Share this video. Warn your friends. Because the retired captain trap is real, and it is waiting for the next unsuspecting passenger. For the Air Debrief, I'm your host,